Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Welcome, Council Chambers, and thank you for coming in. Okay. Before I call the meeting to order, members of council and members of the public, I just want to make a couple comments to start. On Tuesday, you're going to get. Okay. Right. On Tuesday, I signed an open letter to Minister Chandros regarding a couple issues within the healthcare system within Alberta. That was signed by me as an individual and was not on behalf of council or any of the communities that signed. There was an error in the letters. Mayor Young from Leduc and Mayor DeBlanco should not have been on the signee list. Okay. With that, I signed the letter because I've seen and noticed over the last 18 months of 3 pandemics going up and down, the government not doing the proper things. The yo-yo approach does not work in our communities. Every approach that has gone up and down, the next wave has been worse. And that is not good for our communities. This has been a very divisive issue from day one. And with 3 previous waves, I know that the increasing restrictions, the lockdowns, has not done small businesses any favors or residents. I believe that we need to rip off the Band-Aid and take care of the situation now. We see the stats in the ICU units. They are full of COVID patients. Beds that could be used for other surgeries. So that is the reason why I signed it. And if you guys like to talk to me about that later, definitely my phone number is available and you can definitely give me a shout. Okay. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, council, we have an agenda before you. There is a correction under 9.1. We will be removing 9.1 because of the mayor's task force. Our general manager is not here today. She just recently lost her dad, and that has been pulled to a future meeting. Deputy Mayor, if I can have you make a motion to accept the agenda as amended.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I make the motion that we accept the agenda as amended.
Thank you. Members of council, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Okay, that is carried. Okay. Moving on to number 3 of our agenda, it is our public input session. This is where we allow residents to address council on anything that's not on the council agenda. We ask for people to register, and I believe we do have a few registrants. Go ahead, administration.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would just pass it over to our Manager of Legislative Services, who has the names, and we'll call them up. We will be timing per our procedural bylaw. Each person is entitled to 5 minutes to address council tonight.
Thank you very much, General Manager, Your Worship, members of council. As the General Manager mentioned, we do have 5 individuals who registered to speak prior to the meeting. We will call them up in order that they registered to speak. As the General Manager mentioned, we will, as the procedural bylaw dictates, allow up to 5 minutes for each individual to speak. We do also allow, per our procedural bylaw, a total of 15 minutes for the public input session, so we will also time that as well. And with that, we will sanitize the station between each presenter too, so that just gives us about 30 seconds to get that done. And without further ado, I would call the first individual who registered. Tracy can come up.
I'd like to register. Where do I do that?
Thank you.
My name is Scott Monitor. I'd like to be on as a registered to be able to speak to these people.
We are at the maximum.
Oh, you're at the max now, right? So only certain people can talk. Is that how this works?
That is per the bylaw.
Yes.
So we're adhering to the
You
bylaw.
guys really work good on the bylaw.
We just ask for decorum in the chambers, and
Hey, I'm just asking to speak my mind.
we'll ask Tracy to proceed with her presentation.
Thank you very much for this opportunity, Mayor and Council. I'm speaking personally as a business owner, but I certainly do have support from like-minded individuals. Mayor Choi, in your bid for re-election, you did say the town's ability to guide the community out of the pandemic will rely on a series of small decisions, rather than big ones with larger implications. Then I read you coordinated a letter with surrounding mayors to implement a vaccine passport mandate, amongst other measures. This, Mayor Choi, is not a small decision, as promised in your bid for re-election. I am alarmed that the mayors from Leduc, Devon, and Beaumont said significant rewriting happened after they signed the letter. And I know you did speak to this earlier, but I had just written this before. Leduc's mayor specifically said she wanted to discuss the letter with her council. Acting in your official role as mayor, I'm shocked that you didn't choose to do the same. I am curious if this letter was crafted with council's blessings or input of residents and business owners who did elect you. Think about the effects and the logistics if passports are mandated. Instead of thriving communities, supporting local businesses, people will shop on Amazon and they will skip the dishes if they don't agree with this. How will businesses effectively implement, administer, and enforce a process to verify passports? As efficacy of shots wane, will passports have an expiry date? Will employers be mandated to fire employees who choose not to be vaccinated? Now, be clear, this is not a vaccine issue at all. It is one of privacy and human rights. Have small businesses not already paid? Have small businesses not already paid a price with lockdowns and restrictions? I have the freedom to choose what to sell in my store, just as you can choose what to serve in your restaurant or in your businesses. But do not shut down independent businesses, further cripple our economy, create further division, or coerce me into complying with those decisions.
Thank you for your feedback.
This doesn't add up into our time lot, does it?
It doesn't, no.
No.
And next.
Okay, next we have Caroline.
Good evening, Mayor, councilors, and guests. My name is Caroline Campbell, and my husband and I live in rural Parkland County, but Stony Plain has been my home since 1980 when we emigrated from England. I'm here today to talk about my concern about the letter addressed to Mr. Shandro, which was drafted and signed by mayors in and around the Edmonton area, including you, Mayor Choi. There are a few statements in the letter which are concerning to me. However, my focus today is on your collective request for vaccine passports. Mr. Mayor, this is gravely concerning to me, my family, and other members of my community, that you, in a position that should reflect the views of all residents, have taken sides in a highly divisive political healthcare issue. And I recognize and appreciate the comments that you said before the meeting. However, in a position of mayor, you still are representing the community. You have no place directing anyone on when, how, or if they decide to undergo invasive medical procedures. which these vaccines are. It is unbelievable to me that I even need to make that statement today, as it should go without saying that you, as a public servant, should uphold the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms rather than actively seek to abuse it. I would like to remind you that your primary role is to protect these rights, not to make healthcare decisions for individual residents. You, Mr. Mayor, as the leader in this community, have brought more division to a situation that has already seen so much controversy. I think my feelings are best described in a letter from the Sheriff's Office in Claiborne County, Arizona, if I may quote. We have watched this topic as it has divided families, friends, and coworkers. We have seen unprecedented division, hate, and contention in the last year and a half, and now, with the rollout of the COVID vaccine, that division has become more and more widened, and the vitriol more intense. I am appalled at the dictator-like actions we are seeing from governing bodies. End quote. At a time when you should be trying to bring people together, you have actively sought the opposite. This is not only disappointing, but honestly should be grounds for your resignation. I am begging you to retract your comments and support of that letter and find a way to repair the damage that you have created for so many people who live and work in this community and who love this community. Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline.
And next up, we have Daniel.
I'm going to ask Hello? There, that's good. I'm going to ask everybody to hold their hoot and holler until the end. Please, because it's part of the time. I'm here because I'm struggling to look in my wife and my son's eyes. My name is Daniel Cameron Schellenberger. Mayor William Choi. I need to say first that that was a half-hearted explanation. I feel the need to say this first because there will be an assumption that because of my stance that I am unvaccinated. And an unvaccinated individual, that's an assumption. Please don't make that mistake. And whether we like it or not, our individual vaccination status is protected under multiple layers of Canadian law as private medical information. My being proud to be a Canadian has been waning for a while under our current leadership, but I was always proud to live in Stony Plain until recently. I came across the same open letter that I saw through 88.1 newsfeed that there are many mayors, and because mayors are the spokesperson for council, is it safe for me to assume councils too? I'm glad you addressed that it wasn't. Many mayors in and surrounding Edmonton that agree with vaccine passports, which make no sense to me when you all know Canadian law. I also come to find out just today through my beautiful wife that there was the potential for fraud, and if that's too strong a word, deception, in the multiple drafts of this document. 2 mayors so far have stated that there was no language containing vaccine passports in the first draft when they signed on. It quickly changed in subsequent drafts. You may feel that you haven't broken council's internal code of conduct, but I do. At the very least, an argument can be made. So here's the damage. You can no longer be trusted. Because of this, no, they're going to time this. Because of this, there are other municipalities where your words hold no water or weight. You've injured your councillors as their spokesperson because they don't all agree with you. And you've alienated probably half of your constituents. And the reason that I say half is because vaccinated and unvaccinated alike know that the vaccine passport is where the battle needs to be. The solution, if you care at all, walk it back. Just walk it back. Apologize to your council. Apologize to the other municipalities, mayors, and councillors. Publicly apologize to your constituents. And after that, stay in your lane. Because you're operating outside of your appointment. And if you can't do that, let me remind you that there is a vote coming and you've already lost one family because of your actions. That being said, Jesus commands me to love my enemies. You're not my enemy. None of you guys are my enemy. You are my neighbors. Jesus also commands me to love him with all my heart, my soul, and my mind. He also commands me to love my neighbors as myself. You're my neighbors and I love you guys. Even you. And because I love you, I tell you the truth. Vaccine passports lead to nothing but division, hate, and ultimately tyranny. And if you guys stand for these things, then I stand in direct opposition to you. Please stop this division. God bless you guys. Thank you.
Okay, next up we have Debbie.
Mayor Choi, members of council, vaccine passports are against our charter rights. You also violated the Municipalities Act by trying to pass this without public input or councillors' consent, and you didn't sign it as Mayor Choi. Did you forget that you work for us? You are in a position to represent the people. You should be working for the people and reporting both the negative and positive of this vax, regardless of your personal stance. Did you think about the people with religious beliefs, or the people who have never in their lives been vaccinated for any reason, or the people who believe in holistic medicine, or the people who already had COVID and are now immune to this virus? Or the people who took one shot of the vaccine but got so sick and had horrible side effects? Reports of the vaccine injuries are increasing every day, yet are ignored and not reported. The WHO on December 14, 2020, admitted the PCR test as a high problem at a high applications as it detects dead cells from old viruses causing a false positive. The CDC also admitted last month to stop using this test and find an alternative as they cannot detect a virus. Our cycles of these tests are still run between 35 and 40 times. These restrictions are based on the number of cases. However, the number of cases is based upon a positive test result. These tests are falsely inflating the case number of people who are actually sick with COVID. This creates fear and misleading statistics. The inventor of the PCR test, Carrie Mullis, stated many, many times that these tests cannot be used to detect viruses. They cannot differentiate between live and dead matter, meaning whether something is infectious or not. According to the AHS and Hinshaw, they admitted on TV that they have never isolated the virus from a human specimen. In Stony Plain, can you tell us how many COVID positive are in the hospital? How many are actually sick? How many are already vaccinated? And how many have underlying conditions? Why aren't you seeking the answers to these questions? Instead, you're secretly trying to push this passport through, based not on the answers to these questions, but on your own fears. So it's obvious that there is another agenda that you are being forced or threatened to follow. You are creating the divide among the community. The one-sided, political-driven narrative is being fueled by politicians and the media. In 1947, there was a law put into place so people would not be forced or coerced into medical treatments ever again. Maybe familiarize yourself with that.
Thank you, Debbie.
Mr. Mayor and rest of council, as per the procedural bylaw, we do allow 15 minutes total for public input session. According to my timer, we have about a minute 40, 45 left. It would be a decision of council as to whether or not to extend that time frame, and we would just ask for a motion for that.
Okay. Thank you very much for that, and I appreciate keeping track of the time. Members of council, are we okay with going exceeding the 15 minutes for the public input session? Okay. And do we need a motion, or do we need just a verbal?
I would recommend just a motion of council to extend the public input session.
Okay.
Yeah.
Councillor Loy, go ahead.
Microphone. Yes, Your Worship, that make a motion that we extend this meeting further.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Councillor Loy. Call the question. All those in favor?
Heaven forbid you listen to what the people got to say, eh?
Okay. Please go ahead and call the
Okay. Okay.
order, please.
Your Worship,
Go ahead.
members of council, we will proceed with the next individual that did register, and that would be Colleen.
Good afternoon, Mayor Choi, council members, and my fellow Stony Plain Parkland County community. My name is Colleen Duck. I was born and raised in this community. My grandfather, Jack Kulak, who had the egg grading station and the bottle depot, and Mr. Choi's grandfather, Bing Choi, who had Bing's restaurant, were very good friends 60 years ago. Our family's history for business in Stony Plain goes way back. The choices our grandfathers made for their family's security, success, and well-being was paramount, as was their love for this community. I am before you because I am bursting at the seams to ignite a fire in our community to rise up and walk in each other's truths and preserve our freedom. The truth is, across this world, a lot of our doctors, lawyers, scientists, and nurses are bravely trying to share the truth, but are being silenced and censored by our government officials, media, and corrupt corporations that are willing to be paid off by the One World Order agenda. Mayor Choi, you may be walking in your truth when you choose to participate in signing the letter to Tyler Shandro supporting this passport. That's your personal right on behalf of your person. You have forced your truth on our entire community, attempting to strip the rights of our Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms from us under the guise of health and safety. We are our own person. We are all our own person, but uniquely all one. That's according to God. We're all connected to Him. When we choose to walk in love, peace, and harmony, we will create a world of peace because we will be at peace with each other. Now more than ever, our world needs us to love one another, move past our differences, and come together. This is greater than anything ever experienced in our history. We must stand together, or divided we fall. I encourage our community to link arms and walk together with love and unity.
Thank you, Colleen. Members of council, that ends our public input session. Moving on to number 4 is the presentation delegations. If we can just call a 10-minute recess while our staff get hooked up with the virtual presentation, please. Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, members of council. We'll be back to our agenda. Number 4, we have a presentation today, and today we're joined by Dan from Biomass Energy Technologies. Welcome to council chambers, Dan.
Thank you very much, Mayor Troy. Thank you to you and council for this opportunity to talk about our company, which has its head office here in Stony Plain. So have a presentation. I'll just share my screen and then we can go from there. Is that working?
Yes, it is.
Okay, perfect. So again, thank you for this opportunity. I want to introduce to you Biomass Energy Techniques Incorporated. We run under the tagline, The New Dimension in Renewable Energy. Our company is a 2018 Alberta corporation. We have a head office in Stony Plain, Alberta. And our leadership team consists of Henry Giesbrecht as our Chief Executive Officer. He's actually from Lacrete, Alberta. And I am our Chief Operating Officer. Gary Hebert is our CFO. He's a longtime Stony Plain resident as well. We do have a prototype facility in Versailles, Missouri. And currently we have sales in Canada, United States, and in Europe after 3 years of business. Our technology is a biomass microgasification system. And while biomass energy is not new, we're unique in our ability to utilize feedstock with high moisture content. We're optimized at 65% moisture, and we have very low maintenance with very few moving parts. So our traditional system works off of sawdust, wood chips, all kinds of wood waste, and we produce over 4,000 BTUs of energy per pound of fuel that we process. So on those pictures that you see there on the left is a unit that's currently in Ontario. That is a biomass boiler system using wood waste that heats 3 poultry barns. In the middle is our smallest unit. That is a BET-10, so it's about 3 feet wide and about 5 feet long. And on the far right, that's our largest industrial unit. That's up at a sawmill in northern Alberta. Our track record, we have over 130 actually commissioned and operating units, 14 sizes. Again, these systems have been installed in churches, schools, prisons, recreation centers, sawmills, greenhouses, and a variety of agricultural farming applications in Canada, United States, and Europe at this time. Kind of our reason for existing is just looking at the environmental challenges globally. Renewable energy really is only equating for about 20% of renewable energy sourced globally. The sector is only growing at 2.6% a year. And most of the solutions we see today are very weather dependent. And so it might be a great opportunity in some climates and in other climates not so well, but all of them seem to have those challenges. The other thing that we see is a world waste crisis with over 2.1 billion tons of waste being generated annually, landfill pollution, environmental impacts of our waste practices. And even though there's significant mitigation measures in place, this keeps growing. And we looked at a study last year, and we're seeing with all of our efforts to reduce, reuse, and recycle, we're continuing to produce and landfill more waste at rates greater than we have over the trajectory over the last 10 years. Our vision for tomorrow is to take that waste that has an inherent energy. We know the methane that is produced in landfills is 25% more harmful than carbon. And so that methane gas we can use to create energy. So if we can divert it from the landfill and turn it into clean, usable energy, we can reduce waste going into the land. We can clean up our emissions. We don't have a weather dependent. We tend to generate waste no matter what the weather is. And it's a very economical technology. Some of the momentum that we have, we've done successful tests on C&D, commercial and demolition waste, paper, plastic, cardboard, rubber, and MSW, black garbage waste. The unit that you see there is actually located in the Peace Regional Waste Management landfill. So that unit actually has a boiler attached to it, and it can provide heat to their surrounding buildings and help them evaporate the leachate from the landfill. So they've tested successfully a whole bunch of different waste streams there, and this is phase 1 of a project that down the road, the goal is to divert 95% of their waste from the landfill and used to produce electricity even in the summer months when that heat is not required. I want to talk a little bit about our new PRD product line. So in 2020, when COVID hit and things were kind of going sideways in the world, we decided to look at a couple of initiatives, and one of them was to develop some R&D and try and create a new solution. What this has done for us, so we commissioned our first prototype in 2020. Really, it's not a new technology. It combines a traditional rotary kiln with our standard BET biomass microgasification system. So now we can use and have the benefits of a rotary kiln system in a pyrolysis or oxygen-deprived environment, while not having to use fossil fuels in order to get that energy. That allows us to process more waste streams. So we've done successful tests on biosludge, waste from the waste treatment plant, pulp mill sludge, all kinds of MSW and household waste. And this technology can even be used to remediate contaminated soils. And in some applications, they're using them also to produce biochar, which is a way of sequestering carbon to put it back in the atmosphere. And we've actually had significant success with that, producing up to 85% carbon in the biochar, which is a really, really significant number in that space. So again, I'm trying to keep this really short and open it up for some questions. And Mayor Choi just asked me to give an introduction. So I want to thank you for that opportunity. That's as much as I can cram in a really short period, and give you an opportunity for some questions. So I'll just open it up for that right now.
Thank you very much for the presentation, Mr. Duckering, and I definitely appreciate it. One of the reasons we've had conversations that I'm asking you to present to council is because every few years, council looks at our waste management system. And in the next coming years, we're also looking at a revamp of our public works yard and maybe administrative building. So this is a perfect timing for us as council to get some idea of what's happening out there and what kind of other technologies are there, so that when we have those conversations, we can input those into our design and our concept to hopefully maybe reduce our greenhouse gases, as one of the environmental pillars of the town of Stony Plain is environmental stewardship. Members of council, any questions for clarity and understanding to Mr. Duckering? Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Dan. How are you?
I'm well, you?
Nice to see you tonight. I'm really excited about this new technology and what you're bringing here in this area. My question, though, is I've heard, as one does in this town, I've heard that there's kind of a pilot project that's been happening at the Pioneer Museum. And I'm wondering, is that what your company has been doing, or is that a different technology?
Oh, well, thank you for that. And gotta love a small town. So the Pioneer Museum, there's a project that's been proposed there. Nothing is under the works. We have agreed to be a corporate partner in that project if it is to go forward. And the idea of that would be to make an exhibit at the Pioneer Museum that would kind of talk about, the energy transition over the years. One of the patents that we use in our technology actually goes back to World War I, and it's a technology that we're continuing to develop today. So there's a historical story there to tell. That's very, very cool. But we would like that to be a working demonstration so that people can come and see it and see how it works, teach about it, and talk about that energy transition. I neglected, and I saw my notes after I kind of closed my presentation, but we do actually have a demonstration site in Stony Plain right now. So we brought our new PRD technology to a site in Stony Plain on Boulder Boulevard in June. And that demonstration project is intended to end on the end of this month on September 30th. And so we do have a project happening in Stony Plain right now as far as a demonstration that we've had people from all across Canada come and tour and have a look at what our technology is doing. We hired a couple of NAIT students, and the intention was for us to be able to gather more data, because this PRD product line is a new product line. And so gather more data, create some of the documentation that we need for our commercialization. But there is a system that's up and operating in Stony Plain, and actually there was a picture of it in my slideshow, and I neglected to point it out.
Good, thank you very much.
Any other questions? Councillor Laurie, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thanks, Dan, for the presentation. Actually, it was quite interesting, and it's great to know that we have companies like this right here in Stony Plain that are literally making changes worldwide. So appreciate learning a little bit more about that. One of the things that really interested me as well is you mentioned right at the end biochar, and knowing a little bit into it, obviously we have a massive agricultural sector here in Alberta, and how that could be benefits. So how do you see that developing out? Like you mentioned, it sounds like you've got a little bit of traction in Alberta. I'd love to see more, and hopefully we can continue down this road and produce that. But are you looking at a secondary type market from the biochar, or are you looking at that as something that's integrated within biomass energy that you're going to look to split off into the agricultural sector as well?
So thank you for the question, Councillor Laurie. So biochar is a market that came to us, as most of the markets are. We're an equipment manufacturer. I work with a group of inventors. That's very exciting because for those of you that know me, I come from transportation. We're all about structure and systems, do everything the same way every time so you have a reliable result. And now I work with a group of guys that said, well, we can't do it that way because we already did that once. And they keep developing and innovating. So it's, I mean, I'm not sure if it's that or my family size that's giving me gray hair, but it's definitely, one of the two. So our intention is to stay as an innovator and a manufacturer and develop the product line. Biochar is an exciting market, and globally it's really gaining traction and raising attention. There's some significant players making significant breakthroughs, and so what we want to do is we want to partner with them as they come to us and say, this is what we think we need to achieve, and then what can we do with our technology to help them get there. So we're trying to create a system that doesn't rely on fossil fuels, but gives the operators a great variability in their ability and process to produce biochar. Not to take up time, but as an Albertan, I'm sure you all can appreciate the art of the barbecue. And if you came to my house, you'd be sure that I'm destroying the barbecuing, because I'm doing it wrong. And if I went to your house, I might feel the same way. But in the end, we all know what we're trying to get to. And what we've found as a manufacturer is that the people that produce biochar, it's very much the same. Some of them think that you need to use high heat, some low heat. Some it's a long retention time, sometimes it's shorter. So what we're trying to do is develop a technology that gives the end user the opportunity to change those variables and produce what he wants to do. So we don't really have an intention to get into the biochar market ourselves. It's a huge market. There's huge opportunities there. We want to serve that market with our technology.
Excellent. Appreciate that. Well, I wish you all the best in that, and hopefully we can get some Stony Plain born and bred solutions out into that wonderful market and make a change worldwide. So really appreciate your presentation tonight. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for clear understanding? Councillor Mattis, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Hi, Dan. I'm not really clear as to, for example, the use of that in the municipality, and then, so if you could give me a good example of how it's used somewhere else, and then also the cost to, number one, purchase that technology, and then second, to operate it.
Okay. So, there's a inherent energy in all of the waste. So I'm going to focus really on the waste streams that we're really focused on right now, and not just the wood waste biomass that has been typical for our technology. When we look at the waste hierarchy, we talk about reduce, reuse, and recycle. And once we get through reduce, reuse, and recycle, we throw the rest in the landfill. With all of that training, we're still landfilling greater numbers than we ever had before. There's a missing level there that is called recovery. There's energy that's recoverable in that. So I'll give you an example. You look at a landfill and how much shrubs, wood trimmings and stuff like that they put in. Well, that's usable energy, right? We could turn that into thermal energy, convert that into electricity or whatever from that point. What about plastics? Well, that's a petroleum product that's high energy. If we can't recycle it, I know some communities have been collecting that plastic with no market for it. And so we live under this guise that we're really recycling when really all we're doing is stockpiling. And so what we want to do is take and recover the energy out of those pieces instead of landfilling them and further reduce it, but then create that energy in the process in a clean process that doesn't create harmful emissions, but gives us energy that we can use. You look at some of the communities, and I don't know Stony Plain story, but a lot of the communities I've talked to, the amount that they have greenhouse gases generated just from trucking their waste to the various places. If we can create a system that's locally sized for the amount of waste that they use, that can be recovered, not all of it, but the waste streams that can be recovered, and we can turn that into renewable energy, we know that we live in a disposable society. And if we can recover that energy and reduce greenhouse gases, reduce the methane gas, then that's really, really beneficial. And from an economic standpoint, I'll tell you what really got my attention when I was introduced to this idea and this technology is that the typical return on investment from our piece of technology, the capital outlay, and then what you recover in revenue or reduced expenses, there's an ROI of about 2 years. That's really, really significant when you look at typical renewable energy, sustainable energy, whether that's solar or whatever it is. 2 years is a really incredible piece. When we look at the maintenance side of it, we ask our clients to budget 2% of their capital outlay as an annual maintenance budget. And I don't believe that we've ever had a client hit that number, but it's a safe budget for us where we feel like you can have a number on your operating line and you're going to fit underneath that. Did that answer your question, Councillor?
That was very good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Hey, any more members of council have a question, comment? Okay, see none. Mr. Duckring, Dan, thank you much for your time, and definitely was informative. Definitely was informative for me when we first met and you showed me this technology, and I was just thinking of how many ways that can benefit our community as we continue to evolve and grow as a community. I think there's a lot of synergies there, as you mentioned, instead of throwing it away or letting it go to rot, there's opportunities for us to reuse maybe wood, building materials. I think you were also mentioned something about a concrete recycling thing there as well, and even with the plastics and garbage. So again, there's definitely opportunities, and the more information that we have, the better chances that we're going to make the best solution for when we revamp the public works yard and move the recycling center if councils choose to do so in the future.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for your time. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, move on to number 5, which is statutory public hearings. We do not have any today, so we'll move on to the adoption of council minutes. Councillor Bennett, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move adoption of the regular council meeting minute. Can I do that since I wasn't at that meeting?
Yeah, it's just for information, yes.
For information from the August 16th, 2021, as presented.
Oh, actually, let's double check with administration. Is it okay that Councillor Bennett does make that motion?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. Yes, that's fine.
Okay. That is good. Thank you, Councillor Bennett. Any questions or comments, errors in those minutes? Councillor Lowry?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a comment. I just wanted to thank administration for the follow-up on the public input session and the feedback that we received from Heather and Hannah Murray and their presentation from the Ringette Group. I just wanted to thank administration for the follow-up with that group and ensuring that the process will be clear going forward.
Okay. Excellent. And just to confirm that all that information was sent off to the presenters?
I wasn't at the August 16th meeting. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah. Actually, Councillor Lowry is thanking administration for following up, so I'm just double checking that all the information was sent to the proper personnel and Ringette. So
I'll
General
ask
Manager?
the General Manager of CAPS to speak to that.
Your Worship, members of council. So yes, I think the Ringette Group was looking for the overall schedule, and that was sent to them. That was, as stated in the email, that was an error on our part in terms of it was intended to be information to be sent, piece of information, and that was sent very quickly the next day.
Okay. Thank you. Members of council, any errors and omissions on the minutes? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried. Okay, move on to 7.1. 7 is council boards and committee minutes. 7.1 is the CRT for June 5th and, no, May 5th and June 9th. Councillor Lloyd?
Yes, Your Worship.
Yeah, it's on now.
That motion was already made, but has it been not?
Yes, Councilor Loy, the administration said there was a missing slide. If you can just make the motion to accept the CRT minutes from May 5th and June 9th.
I will so move.
Okay. Thank you. Members of council, you had a chance to read those minutes. Any questions or comments to the representative that's appointed on that? Okay, see none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried. Move on to 7.2 is the Growth and Commerce Committee. Councillor Matthews, please.
I think there was a missing one for all of them, and we just need
Oh,
to have, to accept all of them.
Yeah. Sorry, Mr. Mayor. We missed the slide. Generally speaking, what we do is we approve all of the council, board, and committee meeting minutes all at once for information. So now what we can do is we can, if you would like, we can do them, we can continue to do them individually since we've approved the previous motion, just to be consistent for tonight, and then we'll ensure that slide gets put back for a future meeting.
Okay, so thank you very much. So with that clarification, we're going to do 7.2, which is the GCNC of June 22nd, 2021. Thank you. Linda, Councilor Matthews, go ahead.
Yes, that we accept those minutes.
Okay. Members of council, you've had a chance to look through them. Any questions, comments, or errors and omissions on those? Okay. See none, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Sorry, we're just voting on just the Growth and Commerce Committee
Yeah,
minutes?
7.2. Thank you. Moving on to 7.3, the Meridian Foundation. Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move acceptance of the Meridian Housing Foundation meeting minutes of June 25th, 2021.
Okay, thank you. Members of council, you had a chance to read it. Any questions, comments regarding those minutes to our representative? Okay. I just have a question to the representative. In the minutes there, they mentioned something about a grand parade. That sounds very interesting. Can you explain on what a grand parade is?
I'm having a difficult time hearing you, Mr. Mayor. Could you repeat that? A grant that we received?
No, sorry, it was a grand parade.
Oh, thank you. Yes, Mr. Mayor, I can answer that. We are still very much in fundraising mode for the Folkestone Manor. And the grand parade was an idea that we were presented. It's a company, actually, that does fundraising, and this was an initiative they had. And it was just too soon to be able to really get it off the ground this year. So we're planning on introducing that next year as a fundraiser for Folkestone Manor.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. See none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried. Okay, moving on to number 8 is bylaws. We do not have any bylaws. So that passes to number 9. So again, with the amended agenda, 9.1 is off the agenda today and will be brought back at a later time when our agenda manager is able to join us. So 9.1 now is the fiscal sustainability framework. Go ahead, administration.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Your Worship, to yourself and all of council. I'm pleased to present the final fiscal sustainability framework tonight after 2 years of working on the framework and strategies, both internally and with council. Issues such as sustainable revenues and funding sources, expenditure pressures, new growth, the economic environment, and inflation, combined with the pressure to keep municipal taxes affordable, are factors contributing to the financial realities of the town. The framework will meet council's strategic direction to ensure strong organization structure and that the fiscal sustainability framework is strengthened. It provides the highest level of fiscal guidance for the town by setting out principles, strategies, and a process to help us move forward. This will ensure a common understanding of fiscal strategies and considerations and will interact and strengthen the financial policies already in place, many of which were updated in conjunction with this framework. The framework is to be used by council and administration as an active reference in decision-making. You will see within the document business case analysis, financial feasibility analysis, forecast methodology, and corporate plan administration strategies have been added. These document the strategies and principles around these internal processes to support the fiscal sustainability. To give you a little bit of background on what they are, I know you've read the document. The business case analyzes the cost of the project, initiative, or decision, and then the financial feasibility analysis complements that business case and layers on the town funding for the project being analyzed. The forecasting methodology and corporate plan talk about our existing strategies and will encourage us, the town, to strengthen these processes by looking longer term and formalizing things like environmental scans and layering in the results to our corporate plan, which has a well-established process already. I look at this framework as another step forward, strengthening the town's fiscal sustainability, understanding, and look forward to supporting council and admin to challenge our decision-making to ensure we understand the fiscal reality and help inform decisions to achieve the town's vision. I'd now open it to any questions that council may have at the document, and we're excited to use this into the future to help us with our decision-making.
Thank you much for the presentation. Members of council, we've had, as the general manager said, over a little time to go over each and every policy to bring it to where it is today. Any questions or comments for clarity and understanding on the presentation? Go ahead. Councilor Matthews, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just have a question. I've read it and understand the absolute value of this for our decision-making process, etc. But if you could kind of give me an example of how council would be involved in this process of decision-making. I know it's through strategic planning things, but can you kind of give me a little bit of understanding of the process?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Matthews, that's a great question. I think it's something that we'll, continue to work on, and that feedback from council will be helpful around that. What I really see it as, using those questions within the document as we work through different decisions and initiatives to challenge ourselves, both on the administrative side and on the council side. Okay, have we thought of this? Are you comfortable with that? Which I know we do informally, but sometimes it's that document that we can all look at and sort of take the step back and make sure that we've had a robust conversation. So, there's different way we can layer that into the processes, and we'll be, looking to council, does this feel comfortable and did this help you? And to me, it really links to that corporate planning process. That'll be a big one where you'll see it integrate. Or as we bring different business cases or decisions to council, hopefully layering some of those thoughts into those requests for decisions that come back to council.
Yeah, I guess it's just a little bit hard for me to quite envision how, without kind of, let's see an example and see how that's going to be put together. But I'm assuming that you will have that in place, and that as council moves forward and we're making decisions, for example, that process would be there.
Yeah, Your Worship, through to Councillor Matthews, I think this is the first step to document, and part of it's educating and using it go forward. And that can be refined as to how it looks going forward and how we build that out now. I think the base is there, and then it's like, okay, now let's use it actively.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think it's just so important of a document that I don't want it to be lost in terms of, yeah.
Mm-hmm. No, I appreciate that.
Thanks.
Councillor Laurie.
Thank you, Your Worship. And maybe a little bit further on to Councillor Mattie's comments. It's funny, we have it in the section of implications of decision on the lead sheet, and it will form an official document in supporting the corporate planning process. And I'm actually wondering more about seeing these framework policies within the actual corporate plan. So when an item, whether it's operations or whether it's capital, comes in, and we see that in the corporate plan, if now that we have this framework in place, if we will now get, I guess, more of a fiscal story, I guess, around the various items in the corporate plan, how that will work, as well as, you know, I do feel this implications of decision section is very underused in our lead sheet. If we'll start seeing more valuable information in that section in relation to the fiscal sustainability framework when things are coming forward.
Your worship, through to Councillor Laurie, you know, another good question, and I think for me, it's like, yay, we got the framework in place, but they're very good questions as to where do we go from here now. And I think it's timely, you know, we have the lead sheets and the request for decisions of what, you know, what can we do to better support council on that? And to me, the fiscal side is one of, okay, are we doing enough? Does this make sense? How do we get better to support you in making those decisions? So that's why I love the questions in the framework, because I think that could be easily layered in or challenge ourselves. Have we answered all of these, and do we have the story to tell council so that they feel comfortable making those decisions? And understanding it's really about long-term planning, right? Long-term financial, which is complex, as you can see by the model. There's many things that feed into that, but that was the goal of the framework, is, you know, that next step towards that.
Excellent. Well, I look forward to seeing how it will overlay into things like the corporate plan, and how much more valuable information, now that we have this framework in place, we can gather to present with those options and opportunities so we can make better decisions. So appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions of clarity, understanding? Okay, see none. Councillor Pletchko for the motion, please.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. The Town Council approved the fiscal sustainability framework as presented.
Okay, thank you. Members of Council, any questions, debate on the question? So thank you much on behalf of Council and residents. Thank you much for putting this together for us. I know it's been a long process for members of Council as well to sit through there and try to understand which each pillar and spoke means and how it gets incorporated into the whole process. I think members of council have gained a better understanding of the thought process and how much work it has to go through before something comes actually to the corporate planning stage of vetting it through, make sure it fits, make sure there's dollars, and making sure that we have the proper frameworks that we do not put the town of Stony Plain into a financial difficult position. So we definitely appreciate that. With that, I'll call the question. All those in favor? And that's carried. Moving on to 9.2. which is the advocacy strategy update. Go ahead, administration.
Good evening, Your Worship and members of council. This evening I'm just going to share some additional content that was added into the presentation for the agenda item this evening. This is an update and a summary of our priorities related to the upcoming federal election. And so I'll just speak to some of the pieces that tie in with Council's advocacy strategy that was developed in 2018. The intention of that strategy, as Council is well aware, is to guide the engagement with other levels of government, both at the provincial, federal level, and even within our regional municipal network. The goal of that work is really to support influencing actions and decisions that will support the town's strategic plan, and indirectly to a degree the corporate plan as well. And with that, this is an opportunity, as with all elections, both provincially and federally, is an opportunity to really draw out the priorities that you have identified in the strategic or in the advocacy strategy, the relevant components of that you want to be highlighted both to the community and to the candidates as they come forward to represent our community, the broader region of Sturgeon River and Parkland through the upcoming federal election. So with that, we've presented tonight for Council's consideration really 4 key priorities that we want to highlight as part of this. There are obviously more of those within the advocacy strategy, but these are in alignment with our relationship and our work that we do through the federal government. of Canada specifically. And in addition to that, I would say that, a lot of the work that we do going forward will be with the Member of Parliament that is elected going forward. So to begin with, the first priority, and these Council will likely note, when the federal election took place in 2019, these are very much still in alignment with those priorities that were identified at that point in time. Not much time has really transacted in the world of government advocacy and further development. So you will see some common threads in terms of what still resonates today that did back in the last federal election. So speaking to the slide before you, the first priority that's been identified is the growth related to the Canada Community Building Fund. Council will recognize this fund as formerly known as the Gas Tax Fund. This fund is really our most direct, flexible, and predictable source of funding that municipalities receive from the federal government. It's become an integral component of our infrastructure planning and key capital projects, and I've identified two on the screen that were most significant or most recent: the Heritage Park Community Centre and downtown redevelopment. So typically on average we receive just over $1 million from this fund. A couple of recent years, including 2021, this fund has been doubled, and so in this fiscal year the municipality Stony Plain received just over $2 million. So ensuring that this fund can be maintained and predictable is critical to our planning and the work that we do, particularly around our capital planning within the community. And so that is the first item that we've identified for priority. The second, of course, very much relates to a piece of infrastructure that crosses through our community, the CN rail line, and ensuring that we have rail line safety improvements and attention to that rail line and how it intersects and interacts with the other components of our community, both vehicular, pedestrians, other development that occurs. We've identified as the town, through our strategic planning process with council, the need for additional consideration of improvements, safety improvements, specifically a pedestrian crossing and a future vehicular crossing as well. And we've done some initial work with both CN Rail and the federal government with regards to advancing these. So it's really ensuring that we can continue that partnership development work and that dialogue and consideration of ongoing infrastructure improvements to enhance safety measures in the community around the rail line. The third priority out of the four that has been identified really surrounds the economic recovery, and this is broadly speaking both for our community and many of our other communities across Canada post-pandemic as we look to recovering from COVID-19, how the federal government can lead support for specifically our business community and, as a trigger for job creation, for investment. And the impacts in our community that we would see municipally, of course, would be through non-residential tax assessment growth, which is a very critical component of our revenue stream for property taxes and supporting the quality of life in our community. Finally, I'll highlight that affordable housing is also a key component of the work that we do with our federal government. It also ties very strongly with the work in our provincial government as well. This is an area where there has been a growing disconnect between incomes and both rental and housing prices, and we've certainly seen how that's been exacerbated by the pandemic over the last year, and how we look to local solutions to address the housing needs, and in a lot of ways look to the federal government to provide the resources and support that regions need to address their unique housing requirements and opportunities. This is an area that is of growing concern for our municipality, and we've talked about it at the regional level as well. So I raise that for your consideration. So in terms of next steps, once council has given direction to us with regards to these, we typically and would traditionally communicate these directly to the candidates that have put their name forward for the election on September 20th. We would also invite opportunities for dialogue with them through the mayor and yourselves. And going forward after the election, of course, we would engage more directly with the Member of Parliament to advance these, as well as other emergent issues that, that the municipality needs to address with our federal government. So I'll just leave it at that for this evening, but I'm happy to answer any questions that council may have with regards to this.
Thank you very much for the presentation, and those are good points for us to kind of lobby for or convey our concerns with the member of parliament that gets elected. Members of council, any questions, comments regarding the presentation? Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Just in regards to the what was used to be called the gas tax fund, you gave examples of it being used for capital projects. Is it? And I did notice you also mentioned, sorry, through you to administration, it was also mentioned that it provides flexibility. I'm curious, is it also used in as part of operations? Is it, or is it exclusively just for capital funding?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Meyer, I'll look to our General Manager of Corporate Services to provide further clarity, but I believe the gas tax fund is not eligible for supporting operating initiatives.
Through to Councillor Meyer, I know that, you know, for some planning type documents, it may be used for those types of things, but typically it is used for our capital fund just because that's where we need the funding and it's such large dollars.
Sorry, just to follow. So for clarity, we generally use it that way, or it's exclusively only allowed to be used that way?
I believe it is eligible for other uses, but I would want to just verify that. I'm not 100% sure on, you know, they have different parameters for MSI and gas tax fund, and sometimes I do get them mixed up. So I could clarify and give you a firm response if that's something you're looking for.
Yep, that'd be great.
Thank you. Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know it's kind of late in the game as the election is next week, through you, Mr. Mayor, to administration. But we have had no meetings with any of our candidates. Were any scheduled for this week?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Bennett and all of Council, the election, of course, has come up very quickly and rapidly, and typically we would have an opportunity to advance this to you for consideration and then forward to the candidates for an opportunity for dialogue. But because of the timing, we haven't had an opportunity to express that specifically to the candidates. We will be reaching out directly and offer them an opportunity for dialogue, but unfortunately, just due to the timing of when the election was called, we haven't been able to specifically schedule anything at this point in time.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to follow up, then when it's stated that we communicate our key priorities to them, you have already done that through email or some other publication?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Bennett and all of Council, that will be going out to them tomorrow following Council's direction tonight.
Thank you.
Councillor Manning, go ahead.
Just a comment with that. I'm sure that we're going to provide guidance to whoever forms government anyway, so we will be having these conversations. I do recall when we did discuss this document, I talked about the importance of fiscal responsibility and accountability, and that's for every level of government. And we as the citizens of Stony Plain, representing the citizens of Stony Plain, we need to be speaking about the tremendous amount of debt that we are creating for our society and for generations to come. And we do need to have, when we're talking about big spending, first of all, there should be 100% disclosure as to who's paying for that. And guess who it is? It's the taxpayer. It doesn't matter if, for example, you talk about this 3% tax on like a financial institution or insurance company. That will go back to the individual depositor or the client of the bank or the insurance company. It will go back to the individual. There's only one taxpayer. And so it comes to being fiscally responsible at every level of government for what we do. And I would love to have seen that in here. You know, some description of, you know, yes, it's important that we provide quality life and services for our citizens, but at the same time, they need to know that for everything we do, the citizen pays for it. And it doesn't matter what level of government it comes from. So I'm concerned that as we move over, and even when I'm no longer here, I will be talking and presenting to whoever I can about understanding that this is not a society that is just free. Or we talk about, you know, taxing the rich. You look at, and I listened to a presentation earlier today about in terms of levels of government that are, you know, saying, well, let's spend, but we're going to have the rich pay their share. Well, if we keep doing that, it's going to have a very serious impact on our economic well-being, because those are many of the individuals that are running the businesses and creating the wealth in society and helping us with our recovery. So my point is, yes, we do need to ask for things, but we also need to be very careful that what we're asking for is reasonable. And as a society, we have to start thinking differently. So I just wanted to share that.
Okay. Thank you for those comments, Councilor Mannix. Appreciate them. Any other questions for clarity and understanding? Okay. See none. Councilor Laurie, to make the motion, please.
Your Worship, I'll move the Town Council accept the advocacy strategy update for information.
Okay. Members of Council, any questions and comments on that debate on the motion? Okay. Go ahead, Administration.
Bishop, I just have the answer for Councillor Meyer's question previously about capital or not. It is quite stringent around that it should mainly be capital. It does allow for acquiring, planning, designing, but it really is focused on the infrastructure side. So just wanted to provide that.
Thank you for that clarification. And Deputy Mayor asks a good question, because we do also have MSI capital funding and also MSI operating funding. So I can see where there's so much confusion because so many different grants. And actually, I'm very appreciative of you providing that clarity, because I think as a community, we're going to make sure that we do not count on grants for operating. I think operating has to be funded within our own community, and the additional stuff can be funded through grants. So with that, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Okay, opposed? Okay, that's passed. Move on to number. Okay. Okay, before we move on to 9.3, we're going to take an 8-minute recess. Members of Council, we're coming back to our agenda. Moving on to 9.3 is the Royal Canadian Mounted Police retroactive pay. Go ahead, Administration.
Provided summarizes the recent collective agreement reached between the Government of Canada and the union representing the RCMP regular members. The report also provides an estimated impact to the town related to the one-time costs of the agreement. While the Government of Canada is still finalizing the expected responsibilities for municipalities related to these costs, the recommendation for Council's consideration today is to request these anticipated significant costs be the responsibility of the Government of Canada, not the municipalities. Those are my comments at this point in time. I'd be happy to answer any questions of Council.
Thank you very much. Members of Council, any questions regarding the presentation and what we'd be asking for in the motion? Councillor Loy, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I got to find the line here. It's in point 2. Retroactive pay for RCMP regular members and reservists. What are and who are reservists?
Thank you, Your Worship. I drew this information from the information that was provided to us related to the agreement, but I would look to our General Manager of Community and Protective Services if he could provide a clear definition of reservist. I don't want to guess at the response to that. Perhaps if you want.
Your Worship, through to Councillor Loy, through a quick Google search, the reservist is someone that backfills temporary positions that are vacant in detachments. So my assumption would be yourself could be a reservist in terms of if our detachment had a vacancy, they would hire someone that was once employed as an RCMP member, and they could come back without having to go through the security clearances and checks and those types of things. That's what a quick search, but we can get you a more accurate through some counsel through Inspector Loken and send that out via email.
Just to follow up on that, Your Worship, because this is our policy that we're talking about pertaining to the RCMP personnel that we pay for. I do not know of any reservists that would be involved in this, but that does not mean that there is any. So yes, I would like clarification, and if we don't need it, I think it just simply should be removed. But I'll wait for the General Manager to check on that, please.
Yeah, Your Worship, through to Councillor Loy, I believe that number 2 is just basically a general statement. Whether the town of Stony Plain had reservists in that back pay period would be clarified once the payments were confirmed to the town of Stony Plain. So whether our complement included regular members and reservists or just regular members, we would only be paying our proportionate share of those of which were employed at the Parkland detachment and also formerly the Stony Plain detachment.
Thank you. And also to remind members of council, this is a contract between a collective bargaining between the RCMP body itself and the federal government. And that is why we're asking for that. So maybe in the town of Stony Plain, they may not be a reservist because of our detachment size, and other detachments there may be because of their size. But the general manager will provide us some of that clarity.
Yeah, if I just to follow up and then just no more comment required. When I look at it, this is our motion dealing with our RCMP, not Manitoba's or any other municipality within Canada. So it was more of a curiosity because, and when you look at it, it's the NCO's pay, and none of these reservists would be NCOs, non-commissioned officers. It's just a point, that's all.
Deputy Mayor?
No.
Oh, no, sorry, I thought I had an answer, but that was a better one, so it wasn't a question.
Okay. Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I know that this is a position that AUMA is taking, and I'm just wondering, when I read through the information, that is a big chunk of money, that the immediate impact of this agreement to the town is estimated to be between $700,000 and $850,000 in one-time costs. Mr. Mayor, what happens if the federal government does not, so we are to affirm the position that the government of Canada be responsible. Are we in any kind of position if the government of Canada does not see that they are responsible for the one-time payment?
So, Councilor Bennett, I believe, so the contract's between us and the RCMP, so the invoice will be coming to us. And our lobby effort is to ask the federal government to pay that share of it. So if they do not, then it is on the taxpayers of the town of Stony Plain. And there's nothing we can do about it because it's a negotiated contract, which is handed down to town of Stony Plain. So we cannot not pay it.
So, Mr. Mayor, then if I could direct a question to our general manager of corporate affairs, are we prepared, I guess is my question. We always want to be prepared in case of the worst scenario. So is there a plan that we've been working on just in case?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Bennett. I mean, it's been a hard situation for the town because we did not know. We knew they were in negotiations, but we did not know this is what they would settle for. The town did have some smaller accruals in the past with the information that was shared for us, which would help. But we'd have to, there'd be, if this weren't to be funded from the federal government, we would have to look at it and find where to fund. Off top of head, you'd have to likely use your tax levy stabilization reserve or something like that to fund it for the past. So I guess once this becomes clearer, and we're hoping that the federal government pays, because all the municipalities are in the same situation and some are going to struggle being able to do that. Once that decision becomes final, then we would work through if we need to fund some of it on our side and bring recommendation back to council of what that would look like. We're hoping we don't have to do that.
Okay, thank you. And also, one of the options that the town of Stony Plain has as a council is also to use the Policing Public Safety Reserve to bridge the gap as well over time, which the council has done in the past. Councillor Matties?
Thank you, Your Worship. My question is to administration with regards to, I'm understanding from reading this that the collective bargaining started in 2019. It was retroactive to 2016. And what I don't understand is how did we not know that, first of all, I guess, did we know that the collective bargaining was happening in 2019? And did we not know that it was retroactive to 2016, and why wouldn't we be preparing, is my question.
Okay. I think as the general manager mentioned earlier that there was some small accruals put aside for this, but we didn't understand the amount of percentage that was negotiated.
But if you don't mind if I...
Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, Your Worship, through Councillor Matties. I mean, it was, at the start, I would say, it was difficult even understanding what the estimate should be from our perspective. The RCMP did start sharing some numbers in the last year or two, and that's what we were basing our accruals on, but it's a lot less than what they actually settled at. So there's a difference between those two amounts.
Can you please give me a specific as to what they had suggested it was going to be in over 2 years and versus what's happened right now? And then secondly, I'd like to understand, I mean, we just would realize that they're going to ask for inflation in some things, so somewhere between 1.5% and 3%. Of course, it's over 3 on average for a 6-year period. 5-year period.
Okay, I'll let, do you need some time?
Your worship, through to Councillor Matties, I can comment on at a high level. I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but they were estimating or, communicating to us around a 2% increase. And then you can see within the attachment, the amount was higher than that. It's 3 to 4%. So it's around that. What's the difference?
And we were thinking that it was 2% then over 5 years.
That's correct. We did know that they had entered into the bargaining. I would have to go back and see what year we began accruing, but I believe it was around 2017.
Okay. So I guess I would hope that we were even considering that at 2% over 5 years that we would be preparing for that. And I, as a councillor, I'm just wondering why it wasn't brought to council.
Your worship, through to Councillor Matthews, I think the challenge with some of this is just the communication from the RCMP to us and understanding what's going on, and that they're negotiating with the federal government, and we weren't privy to those conversations. So I would say the last year or two, some of it's has become more open, but it's definitely a challenge from the administrative side to understand that and then to estimate those costs. I don't know if the GM Caps has anything further he wants to add.
Your worship, through to Councillor Matties, we do get quarterly reports which include forecasting for future years with respect to the RCMP. And around 2017, they started forecasting the back pay for us. So we started accruing those amounts based on the estimates that they were providing us. So recently, in the last 12 months, more information had been shared. And I would say in the last 6 months, we were notified that the 2% was very light. And that's when AUMA became more actively involved in this conversation. And that's when we started doing more calculations or getting more accurate, detailed information about what the actual was, or what the details of the negotiations were between the federal government and the union. So we've continued to do our diligence as the information has been presented to us. And I would probably align this with a capital road plan. We would accrue the money and bring that as part of our information to council in terms of, in this year, we're proposing to do this type of maintenance related to this infrastructure. We have lots of unions that we have. Public Works has a union also, and that's part of, we do renew that contract from time to time, and that's included in the corporate plan document in terms of the contract was renewed, and this is a percentage increase. Typically, there's not a multiple year back pay related to the public works type unions. This is something that I don't believe we experience quite very often in our municipal operations in terms of a federal government going back a multiple number of years and at this level of cost to our municipalities, which is why AUMA became very actively engaged in the conversation over the last 8 to 10 months, because it is a very sizable increase, and we were prepared to pay what we believe the increase was, and I think we were on track to being able to bridge that gap with what we had accrued. But again, once the details came out about the actual percentages, then we started to do more diligence with our math, and information became more clear and more available to us. And that's why the report is here, and this is why AUMA has became more engaged in that conversation.
If I just may clarify, so what you're saying is that we had set aside money that would cover approximately 2% over that 5-year period?
Your worship, that's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you for the questions, Councilor Madison. Excellent. I appreciate that the staff has been incurring money based on what they were kind of given at the beginning. So if you use a 2% number over the last 6 years of what this has gone back to, it's a 12% increase. So I believe that staff was doing a diligent job of putting away or incurring that much money away. But when it comes out to a 21.52% for the 5 years, for the 6 years. That's an 80% increase of what we were planning for. And that's why I think a lot of municipalities do not have the capacity to increase taxes again to cover something that we were not at the table to negotiate that conversation. As mentioned by the general manager, sometimes when we were sitting at the table with our unions that directly work for the town of Stony and Plain, we'll go back a couple years, not 5 or 6. And I think that was something negotiated by the federal government on behalf of all contractors of the RCMP, which is why we're asking the federal government to pay for that share, because we weren't able to voice that opinion. Councillor Meyer? Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a quick question. I'm sure maybe you could probably even you could answer this. I would be correct in assuming that even if the provincial police or the provincial government brought in a provincial police force, we'd still be on the hook for this? Thank you.
Yes, because it is retroactive pay. So, okay, any other questions? Thank you. So if council approves this, then we do go ask the federal government to step up and take this burden on, because it was negotiated by them with the RCMP union. When do we expect an update to council?
Your Worship, through to you and all of council, we will be forwarding the letter to the Minister of Public Safety directly, and as soon as we receive a response to that, we would certainly communicate that back to council. Just as an estimate, I wouldn't expect to receive any update before the federal election, so it would probably be something that we would be looking at receiving towards the end of this year.
Okay. So my next question is then, the letter will be held off until we know who is the actual minister.
The letter will be forwarded promptly and directly, and it will be transitioned to whomever is in the ministerial role, as all correspondences are that are of relevant files for the minister to be briefed on.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions for clarity and understanding? Okay. Deputy Mayor, if I can ask you to make the motion, please.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. The Town Council accept the RCMP retroactive pay report from administration for information, and 2, affirm the position that the Government of Canada be responsible for the one-time payment of costs associated with retroactive pay for the RCMP regular members and reservists resulting from the collective bargaining agreement signed on August 6, 2021 between the Government of Canada and the National Police Federation.
Thank you for the motion. Members of council, any debates and questions on that motion? Okay, see none. Thank you for making that motion, Deputy Mayor. I do hope all municipalities are sending a similar motion or letter to the federal government. I think it is not fair that the collective bargaining was done on our behalf without us being there or even having input. I call the question. All those in favor? Okay, that is carried. Okay, move on to 9.4, I believe, is the government's priorities meeting cancellation. Administration?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just with upcoming agenda items, there's not many left to come with this term of council, and so we're proposing that the October GNP be canceled.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for this, because I think Councillor Manny has asked if we can get it earlier than later if we were going to cancel. So, questions from members of council? Oh, yeah. Sorry about that. I just said thank you very much for bringing this forward sooner than later, because I think at the last meeting you asked if we can bring this back sooner than later so that we can plan for our days instead of coming last minute, because if we didn't cancel it now, there's a 24-hour notice, which then we're all still in our calendars. Okay. See none. Councillor Bennett, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that Town Council cancel the Monday, October 4th, 2021 Governance and Priorities meeting.
Okay, thank you. Any questions and debate on the motion? See none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Okay. And that is carried. Okay, moving on to number 10 and 11, which is council information discussion. This is the time for members of council to update the rest of council or administration on any questions or queries that we receive from residents, and anything that you want to share in terms of feedback. Councillor Laurie, start with you today.
Thank you, Your Worship. Nothing too much. Just wanted to say a quick thank you to the speakers that we had this evening. It's nice to actually see our public come out to our meetings and express their opinions. We value hearing the feedback from the residents, so it was great to see them this evening. It's been great as well that we've actually been able to get out to some events. We've had many events since our last meeting, including as many as frequent as this weekend. So it's been great to get back out and do that. And hopefully we can continue on with that, as we know that that's part of the strong fabric of our community. Other than that, I'd just like to remind everybody that today is the kickoff of the Smile Cookies Week through Tim Hortons, and the funds that are raised from that go back directly to the, I believe it's called the Tri-Region Wellness Association now, and he was supporting Westview Hospital. So feel free to indulge this week and hold the diet off for 7 more days. That's all I have this evening. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Laurie. Councillor Matties.
Oh, thank you, Your Worship. I'm wondering if I could just take this time to let the public know that I will not be running for the election this year. And I wanted to say, first of all, thank you to the citizens of Stony Plain for, really trusting in me over the last 4 years. I want everybody to know I've done my best, to serve everybody with this council. And I do really, truly appreciate having this experience. It's been wonderful. I wanted to highlight a few things that was really exciting to me over this last while. I remember a couple of years ago I had a conversation with MLA Cyril Turton regarding the importance of extended producer responsibility and just how important it was to our environment and to our economy. From this, he set up a meeting with a group of us, and from the information gathered and the research that was done from that meeting, he put forward a private member's bill. And that was unanimously supported in the legislature. And together with all the initiatives of the AUMA, this is moving forward. And so it's been an absolutely amazing experience to really have been part of that journey. Secondly, with the Growth and Commerce Committee, I have to say that I've just been one of my most favorite committees. I've been there for 4 years because of my business background. We've done so many things to support business in the community and really to work towards supporting all of the businesses and trying to ensure that we attract business to Stony Plain. We have setting up broadband and internet service, and thanks to Mayor Choi and to Sean McCauley, our Economic Development Officer, for working so hard with TELUS behind the scenes too to make this happen for Stony Plain. I wanted to say that I was very, very proud of our council. We talked about this earlier this evening, that we were able to meet just over a year ago, maybe it was a year and a half ago, with the Francophone Centred in Nord School Board. We had dinner together, and we just had such a great experience. We knew that we were a great fit together, and here they are coming to Stony Plain. And it was just absolutely amazing that we could have that wonderful culture coming here and what that's going to do for the growth of our community. I want to also thank the residents of Stony Plain who have contacted me over the number of years, over this last 4 years, with suggestions or concerns. And it takes a whole community to make a community, and so I really appreciate all of the citizens in Stony. My decision to run, not to run, was a difficult one. But I do know that, there's personal matters for me that have to be looked after. And I wanted to share that I know that the new council that will be here will just be really strong because of the strength of this administration and the strength of this council. And also that I know that with Bloom Consultants, with having them work with a council moving forward, it'll really help people just be strong and get right off, to a really good start initially. So very, very thankful for all of those things. I know everybody will be doing well. And the one questions that I have just to finish up is, I had Don Smith, one of our citizens, talk about a map and a church listing, and we said that we would bring that forward. Our administration would look into that. And secondly, about, I just would like to have an update with regards to what has happened with Bright Bank Avenue and the three-way stop, and if we're working on that. So that's everything, but thank you so much for the opportunity and the privilege.
Thank you, Councilor Mattis, and definitely we've appreciated your input and your wisdom into our council, and definitely you've challenged us to think further than we had to, so I appreciate it. Administration, can you provide those email feedback regarding those two questions that Councilor Mattis had?
Your Worship, yes, I'll pass that on and we'll get an answer for Councilor Mattis.
Thanks.
Oh, Community and Protective Services GM has an answer.
Your Worship, through to Councilor Mattis, certainly staff have been tracking some data related to that particular location, and we're formulating and compiling that data, and we'll provide a response very shortly with respect to that. So that will include Traffic Safety Act recommendations, plus we've also had our speed data collectors up in those locations to provide us some accurate data related to speed. So certainly that information will be coming shortly.
Shortly means approximately when?
The general manager of P&I is currently on vacation. I would just have to check with his staff to see how far along they are with compiling, but I believe it's very close.
Okay, sounds great.
So I would say within the next 10 days.
Sounds good. So just need to know about the signage, the map of Stony Plain and a church directory, if that is a possibility in our community.
Like we're going to address and talk to the chamber about that, because it used to be on the side of the highway. It was just a little kind of a bump out, kind of a parking area where people can park and see the map of Stony Plain, and also had all this of the service groups and churches on there. That was taken out because of the widening of the highway, and also because of the additional digital sign. And I think Councilor Mattis asked a good question. Is there any appetite to having a sign that's similar to that, but within Rotary Park?
Your Worship, I'm not aware, but I've made a note here and we'll follow up following this meeting.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much, Councilor Mattis.
Thank you.
Councilor Petchko?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Again, I'd like to echo Councilor Lori's comments regarding the public today. I believe it was a great representation from the region, not just our citizens of Stony Plain. It is, what we're starting to see is people actually speak up and want to have a say within our world rather than being dictated to by politicians. It's a safe bet that it's a probably 50-50 split today as to where we sit within it, but it has truly divided many of us, many of the people in the world, and it continues to divide. So until people stand up and take some action against it, we're going to be in a situation that is uncomfortable for all of us, a tough decision. We are not health experts, we are council, and our goal is to look after our community. And with public input, we will be able to do that in a very, very professional way. So I think that hearing from the people today was a reasonable request, and I look forward to anybody that wants to come to council and or talk to any one of us at our own council at any time. I would encourage everybody, that's what we're here for. And to Councillor Mattis, don't even know what to say. I think the 4 years that we've gotten together, we have come a long way. We have grown from a council to a team, to a very supportive team, and each one of us brings a very unique aspect. You brought great aspects to this council that nobody else could bring. You are going to be well missed. And I don't think that we're losing a councillor. We're gaining somebody that's going to be a great town advocate, as well as I believe I've gained a great friend. So I look forward to you someday being back in this chair. I believe that that would be something that you may be considering down the road, and don't ever stop that dream. That dream is a great place. You've done a fantastic job. And anytime you would like to talk, the door's always open.
Okay, if you guys all do that, that's going to be it. So, thank you, though.
Deputy Mayor.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. And I mean, I won't ramble on, but yes, I would share Councillor Plechko's feelings in terms of Councillor Maddie's leaving. I very much appreciated our time together on this council. So we'll just keep it short like that. I do want to raise awareness about Neighbours Day, Saturday the 18th. I was out this last week rustling up some interest on my street, and a couple of neighbors brought a few issues to my attention that I'd like to share with administration. So at the end of my street on 56th Avenue, the light is not on, and it gets quite dark. And there's a park at the end of our street that has a pathway that leads through it. And speaking to another, so one complaint was it's very dark, and there's concern about that. Speaking to another neighbor, they mentioned, well, this is quite the issue actually. People sometimes continue to drive through our street into the park as there's no barricades. There were rocks there, they've been moved out of the way. And so on more than one occasion, apparently people have mistakenly or intentionally carried through our street and wound up driving their vehicles through a park. So if administration could look at that and address it. I'm not sure if it's a light or if it's barriers, but at some point that could potentially be a problem.
Good, thank you for those, bringing those forward. Administration, did you manage to track them? Okay, and that's the light at the end of 56, is it 56A or 56? 56th Avenue. Okay, and then also then definitely driving through the park. Thank you. Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So first of all, to Councillor Maddie's, it has been a pleasure having another woman on our council and someone that I could certainly relate to, and actually the support that she's given to me, and the research, the work that this person has done to serve this town and this council is truly phenomenal. So I want to thank her for that, and thank her for, you know, she didn't just represent Stony Plain here at this council table. She represented us at all kinds of regional boards and the EMRB, and even a committee from AUMA, and that says a lot about Councillor Maddie's and her dedication. So she is putting that same dedication into her family and into other aspects of her life, and I truly respect her for that. Thank you, Linda. But Mr. Mayor, that's not all. In regards to the public input session tonight, I do respect the Stony Plain residents who were here this evening. I respect their point of view. But it was fairly obvious that the views of the public here tonight it was obvious what their point of view was. What was missing, however, was the public who did support the letter. The public who did support the letter that the 10 mayors sent to Health Minister Shandro, knowing that there are residents that appreciate and need that strong leadership and that strong statement that was in that letter in regards to the actions that the provincial government have and have not initiated. So I wanted to publicly state that I do support this letter, and especially I support you, Mr. Mayor. You have always made it clear that your heart is in this town and in this town's best interest, The decisions you have made over the years has increased the reputation and the progress of Stony Plain. And I would only hope that one letter does not influence the public's opinion of you as a leader and as a mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Loy.
I'm lit up. Yeah, well spoken there, Judy, Councillor Bennett. I agree with you, Mr. Mayor William. I've had the privilege of serving on this council now just about 8.5 years. That was the time that you became mayor. I got in on the by-election and then 2 other elections after. And I do have to say that if I could repeat what Judy said, you have done an excellent job over that time. I don't know how you remember half the stuff you remember. That's why they gave me a name tag, because I have to look and just remember who I am. No, but you've done a good job. And Judy, not one letter should shape the public opinion. I invite those people who did come here to come again at some time and talk to you about it for clarification now that people have had a chance to think about things. And I also encourage those who do support whatever you call it, whether it's a passport or they're pro-vaxxers, call it what it is, to also come and lend their support. So if something like that was to be inaugurated, how it personally can affect them. And hopefully the 2 sides can come to common ground. We've saw this going way back with the masks. There was the anti-maskers and there was the pro-maskers, and it was 50-50. It didn't make any difference who you went to. If the chamber did something, if we did something, it was still just, it was like a seesaw. So I applaud you for the job that you've done, and you've been an excellent leader for this town. Excellent. I did send out an email too to SLT and to Mayor and Council advising that I would not also be seeking re-election. I think everybody knows my personal situation regarding spousal health. So far things are still fairly decent, and we just pray that the American government will open up the borders, because when they open up the borders, you're just going to see a cloud of dust. Me getting through the first closest border crossing, and then I can get the motorhome and the RV and the little tracker across, because we have some goals and objectives down there. It has been a privilege. I've had a lot of things in my life that I rated fairly high. Well, one being 25 years in the RCMP, my 3 UN missions, those were up there. But I have to say, I wish I'd have known more about civic duty. I probably would have tried to get on earlier, because it's a chance of a lifetime, and it is an extreme honor. You can have the federal politicians, then you can have the the provincial, but I dare say the municipal. I don't call myself a politician because I don't have a party, I don't have a leader, I don't have a platform. But to work with fellow councillors, and we're not all like-minded at times, and that's the challenge, to work through these things. But we all work for the betterment of our community for whatever the reasons are, and those differ. And it has been a privilege, one that I'll never, ever forget. And so thank you very much. And Linda, I'll just ditto all the kind words that were sent to you, so thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Loy. And again, Councillor Loy and Councillor Matties, definitely your words of wisdom, your knowledge, and your participation in council conversations, debate, and then strategic planning will be missed. I think we've all, as a community, benefited from your input, your wisdom, and definitely your commitment to make our community better. Definitely, thank you for that. And just in terms of the public input session, it was good to see so many people out. As we always say, the public input session is for residents to come and voice their issues and concerns with members of council so we can hear it. And we definitely heard some of that perspective. And I would echo the fact that, that this has been a divisive issue from day one, 18 months ago. And I think the common ground for everyone is that we want this to be over sooner than later. And how does that happen? Sometimes it is a difference of opinion. Sometimes it's just a different way of approaching it. But I think the letter calls for stronger leadership. We mentioned here before that we need to stay in our lanes. Well, if we have a government that's not in their lane doing their job, somebody has to step up. Somebody has to make the ask and request. And that was generally the point of the letter. It's about some intention. Hopefully the provincial government will listen and provide those data that we need, and then we can work along with them to come to an understanding, to get our community healed, and again, join together as a whole. But until that happens, we need to stand up for what we believe in. Sometimes it's different than your views, sometimes it's different than your views. But that's okay, because we live in a country that we're able to share those views and still be amicable, pleasant, and be friends with each other, because we're allowed to have those different opinions and views. Again, I stand behind asking for more data and more leadership from this provincial government, and I will continue to do that because our communities need to heal and our communities need to move on. And with that, just I think Councillor Meyer mentioned Neighbours Day. That is a great event that's happening at 10 o'clock on Saturday. So come down to Chicago Park, there's a little kickoff, and then I think there's the little things that are happening up to the community. But also at 11 o'clock is our annual Arbor Day. So hopefully everybody's able to come plant some trees and understanding the fact that urban agriculture, urban forestry in our communities are important. We definitely need to replenish that kind of the treetops that have been knocked down through development. This is one of the things that we do to make sure we enhance and bring to light that the town Stony Plain is in the process of planting more trees, and it is one of our stewardships, is environmental stewardship, so we will continue to stand on that pillar to make the town Stony Plain a better community tomorrow than it is today. Okay. With that, we are adjourned. Thank you.